All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Nature Journal Show. Today, we're going to be talking to Amy Schlesser about phenology projects. Hi, Amy, and welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me on, Marley.
Okay, we've got a visual audience, so let's just dive in and see some of the goodies right away.
Mm-hmm,
Maybe
mm-hmm.
you can show us some of these amazing accordion phenology books that you've been working on.
They're a little hard to
Whoa.
see. Yes.
Wow.
Ta-da! This is very different than how I normally do nature journaling, but it was a fun project. Yeah.
Awesome. So, I know that a lot of people have heard about phenology through this concept of phenology wheels. Have you made one of
hmm
those before you did these accordion ones?
I haven't done that. I think like doing a whole year and like a little pie
Yeah,
chart per month, which is what I think I normally have seen. Like, I don't, it would be hard for me to like represent a month with one thing. I think it's just a
right.
little different than how my brain works. And I like to write a lot. Although you'll see in these, I had to limit myself as well. But I do think those are cool, like representations of like, I don't know. I could imagine doing that as a side project along with some other nature journals, but I haven't tried that kind. No.
So, how did you decide to do this phenology project with the accordion books?
Yes. I'll go back in time and show you some of my sketchbooks. Like high level, this represents one tree changing their leaves and the leaves falling over a course of 8 weeks through pie
Wow.
through pie charts. So I think it's just a coincidence that phenology wheels are circles and pie charts are circles. But yeah, I'll kind of walk you back in time and show you one of my more typical nature journals, which is like, this one's very big. It's okay. We don't need to see the
I'll
details.
put
But
you on this. Here
oh,
we go.
okay, cool. So you don't need to see the details or anything, but essentially I was nature journaling out in October one year and at a park just walking around and seeing all these different amazing fall trees. And I had just moved back to the Midwest from California, which has seasons, but they're less prominent than like, oh my goodness, all these trees are changing color in Wisconsin, and just all the
Hmm.
different patterns and noticing that like the different trees were like at different stages, and there was just so many interesting things. And I realized even during this, I was drawing leaves, but then I was also starting to think like, like I could kind of like some of them have turned a little and some of them have turned a lot. And how do I represent that? I could have just drawn the trees, but I'm kind of a
Hmm.
diagram dork as well. So I was starting to think of like pie charts. And I think that's what got me thinking about this on a
Gotcha.
bigger picture. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So, let's see. Is it springtime yet where you are?
That's what I'm starting to figure out right now. I'm looking at the trees and when like the buds burst. It's like, yeah, it's like almost spring, becoming spring. I don't know when it actually starts, but yeah, we're starting to see life pop back up from the ground.
Have you done phenology projects during different times of year besides the fall?
No, not yet. I'm thinking this year might be the first time I do it. Like I have my nature journals. I have many years of them. That said, I'm not going back to like the same place every year during those months. So I haven't. Yeah. So this project in fall was interesting to me. It was only 8 weeks though, so it would be fun to do like a longer study.
Cool. Yeah, I think there's a from my experience, it seems like the phenology wheel projects are the year-long ones are a type of project that has sort of a high abandonment rate, and or it's like one of those art projects that it can become all procrastination and perfectionism and these different things can set in. And I think part of it is committing oneself to a project that has to go for a year. And sometimes if it's all in the same place, that can be a little bit hard. Have you dealt with any issues of like perfectionism or like self-doubt or artistic block with your phenology project?
Yeah, it's really interesting. In my nature journals, I'm very, I don't know, loose and in the moment, and I don't care too much about how things look at all. And I mean, for this project, there was naturally kind of a lot of pre-planning that went into it. What is the page? What are the pages going to look like, and everything? And there were some of them. Let's see. These are hard to see. It's okay. You don't need to see the details. But I was like, the opening pages, maybe they should all be the same color, and I should make like the
Mm,
font look kind of not, So I was. It was slowing me down a little, and so I do think something about the nature journal and the even the large pages and my normal style feels very freeing to me, which is something I had to work towards. And this, yeah, it was a lot more of like, I want this to look nice, and I hope I don't get a stain on the paper and whatever.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. Let's back up a teeny bit, and for people who
Mhm.
don't know what phonology is, what's your sort of definition, or how do you think of the term and the concept?
Yeah, as far as I know, phenology is like the changes over time in a place. I mean, phenology can be anywhere. So, but yeah, you often think about it as like, how is this neighborhood, this park changing over the course of weeks or course of years,
Mhm.
um, or or yeah, even this one plant. So it's just yeah, it's bringing that in kind of sometimes like a big picture time scale into say journaling, which is a big commitment, keeping looking at the same place many times.
Cool. So I think a lot of people are probably I know that you're like a folding expert and you do tons of zines and stuff like that.
Mhm. Mhm.
So people who are watching this are probably curious about sort of the process. Could you talk at all about how the logistics? Like, you're drawing directly onto those small little things, and then like, do you cut, and how do you do the folding? And people like
Yes.
geeking out on the process part. So maybe you could tell
Okay.
us a little bit about that.
Let me see. Yes, I do. Hold on. Let me grab something right behind my computer. Um, this is a lot. Let's see. So this is one piece of paper, like 8 by 11, cut in half. So here's actually like a little template thing.
I'm
All it
gonna
is,
put you on solo layout again, okay?
yes. So if you can imagine like standard American printer paper, you can see I taped it in the center. So I just taped it in half. This is one half of a paper. This is the other half of a paper.
Okay.
Um, and then I folded each side. And just the thing you have to remember is if you want to like tape these or glue these together, multiple of these, you have to like leave a little tab at the end. You don't have to,
Oh,
but yeah, it's easier a little to have something to tape to each other. So this is just hold on. This is just some lame tape. So I have like, ooh,
okay.
yeah, look, I can just almost take this apart. Yeah, so that's one piece and that's another piece, and it's a little helpful to have
Okay.
a little extra. And I mean, the fun things about these is they can go on forever. It's like a timeline to me, and it can go a long,
Yeah.
long time. Yeah.
So how do you measure or how do you divide it equally? You take an 8.5 by 11 page, you cut it down the
hmm
middle, then how do you
hmm
do the folding and dividing of the segments?
Um, I do it a bit intuitively,
Okay.
but yeah, I think exactly like the pages should be the same size. So thinking about what is it, 11? So if you say the pages are about 2 inches or something, I guess that only equals 8. But like I measure and then I leave a little space at the end, and the little
Okay.
space was kind of miscellaneous. Should have, yeah, shown a
And
template,
then
but go ahead.
you start drawing in pencil, then you start sort of uh organizing everything in pencil first, or how do you do that part?
I did, and I realized it was a huge pain, so I would have done it
Oh,
differently. So as you can see, I was having the circles in the same place and having the names in the same place, and essentially I made a little tracing template for myself of like that's the circle size, and it was what essentially I realized is like I could have just made a little template and printed these, and so just like maybe there's a light underline of where I want to put the date, and just like an outline of a circle, because I did 10 of these tree books, and they took a long time hand drawing all of those. But yeah, what I did for this is I just did pencil of like underline-ish where I want those. But yeah, being very precise with the same size of circles on each one. It was a lot. Oh no, are you frozen, Marley, or am I frozen? Okay, sounds like Marley is frozen. Maybe he's been able to communicate that to me or to you all. He also has told me. Hold on just a second. I think I will just keep talking until Marley's able to get back on. And I'll kind of show you what in the world these like pie charts even are, like what I'm tracking here. So what I was trying to do is for each of these pages is 1 week, and I was like, I want to change how I want to track the colors of the tree. So say this tree is normally green until it changes in the fall and it becomes yellow. But then I was like, but I also want to track the leaves falling off the tree. So it was a bit of a tricky puzzle. What I decided to do was breaking this up into it's a pie chart percentages. I already said that. And like this is how much of the tree-ish was still green. This was much of the tree that was changing color. This is yellow. And then that's how much what had like fallen off. And so you can see this change over every week. You can see how like the amount of leaves that have fallen off have increased, and yeah, and then over time trying to compare this.
Whoa, I think I'm back.
Yeah, you are back, or at least I can see and hear you.
Okay, sorry. The internet infrastructure is not as good as I thought it would be. But okay, cool. Well, thank you. Sorry to leave you hanging there for a second.
No problem.
Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about circles because you just called yourself a diagram dork. And I would say of all the nature journalers I know, you are pretty well-rounded in that department. So why do you think circles, and there are circles on your page, and you mentioned circles versus wheels earlier. When do you think circles are useful, and when do you think they're not useful?
Oh, should we go down this route? This is very, very
Yes.
fun. Okay, so I think that's when you decide to do a data project, like, or even just pick a type of diagram, that's one of like the most interesting questions. And one of my favorite parts is actually playing around with that. So I've also pulled journals where I just have drafts. I was like, here's all the questions I want to answer, and I had too many questions to answer. And I was like, I could track this. I was like, how am I even going to track this? And this is, I feel like this might feel very overwhelming to other people, but it just really excites my brain, just being like, how am I even going to represent this visually? So what I wanted to do was, I was like, I want to know how many leaves are kind of falling off the tree week by week, and like what colors they're changing, and maybe I need to do that in 2 graphs. Or I think I was like, maybe I could also do a calendar and I'd have weeks and I'd color it. Like I went through just, I remember like sitting at some cafes and bringing this and just like doodling and trying to figure this out. And
Wow.
then yeah, and so then these were some other ways I was thinking about doing it. You can see that I was like, I could do pie charts
Wow.
and like put them on a calendar, and then easier probably would be doing a bar graph. They're easy, like they're easier to draw than circles. But I got really attached to circles because, and I think this would have been, I think this is actually the cutest, and maybe I'm like, maybe I should have gone with that one. But I wanted to play with the idea of a circle and how that's kind of like a treetop.
Wow,
Um,
yes, I want to steal that idea.
yeah, and I ended up not going in that direction. These were actually, the circles were kind of a pain to color this big, so like I could have made them smaller
Mm.
anyway. but I was kind of like, I need room for text on this somehow. Because like, what am I gonna
Yes.
do? Like, I write a lot. So that was limiting anyway. And so I was like, there's no room for a stem, whatever. I'll turn them into pie charts, or a trunk, I mean.
Mm,
So, but yeah, that's one of my favorite things is like, yeah, I don't know. These are all cute. Like this was so fun to do. And yeah, a lot of times there isn't necessarily a best graph. Sometimes there must be a best graph, but sometimes like lots will work. And to me, it's just playing around, and seeing what is fun in a way.
cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
last year, right around this time of year last year, I decided I was gonna do a phenology wheel,
Mm,
and because I had seen, like, all the projects that people were doing about phenology that I was seeing at that time at least were phenology wheels. They get a lot of attention on the
mhm,
Nature Journal Club Facebook page. Maybe there's an aesthetic thing to it. Something about the concept is also appealing, and it's interesting information. And so I automatically did a wheel,
mhm,
but I didn't really think it through. And so my plan was I had a lot of observations from, I was looking at wildflowers and stuff in California in like January and February, like things leafing out and things flowering really early. And I filled an entire all of my data was from like 2 months, and then I made a wheel showing those 2 months, and it didn't make any after I finished it, I was like, "This doesn't actually make sense at all to have it on a wheel because that time period doesn't actually represent anything cyclical." And so, like, if you go through a whole year, it makes
mhm,
sense that it's on a wheel, but if you're only going through a couple months, there's no real reason that it's to put it in that cyclical shape. And then I
mm,
was experimenting with other ways of showing it. So since then, I've been thinking that if people see phenology wheels and they're like, that's something that I want to do, I think it would be useful for them to see your brainstorming page, because your
mm.
brainstorming page kind of helps people think outside of the wheel a little bit, basically.
Yeah, I like that. Think outside of the wheel. I know I just have a hard time drawing in like little triangle slices. It's not my
Yes,
favorite thing.
exactly.
That was just one thing I was like,
No,
I didn't.
it's really,
Yeah.
really, it's really, really hard. Like I'm starting a new project now,
Oh,
and it
cool.
is really hard to fit things into those spaces. Also, the circle fits really annoyingly on the page because our pages are
Mm,
rectangular. So it's the most annoying shape probably to fit on the
mhm,
page. But what about, could you talk a little bit more about pie charts and like percentages and how
mm,
a percentage maybe makes sense in a circle shape?
mhm. Yes. And for these, I like really had to eyeball it when I was looking at the trees. So let me start with one of my simpler ones, perhaps. Yeah, it's like 100% green, obviously. And then sometimes it's like it's starting to turn yellow just a bit. And like normally I think of them as like half.
Hmm.
Like, is it about half? Is it about a quarter? And
Right.
then, and yeah, and I try to go from there. And um, it's a little hard to do, but those are my like main marks of of where I'm thinking. And a lot of it, I mean, it's very subjective when you're doing this. I'm like,
Yes.
should it be there? Should it be there? And trying not to worry about like, yeah, you're not going to do it right, but it's okay. This isn't a data I'm like doing, giving a scientist or anything. It's playful, and I'm just trying to get a sense of it.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. Well, that actually leads to a question from the audience that
Mhm.
I've been sort of postponing, but here, what do you think about this question here from Cindy?
Mm. Yeah, great. Am I doing all these projects for my own use? So, yes, during for this project, it's totally for me. It was a yeah, and I made it quite big. I did 10, which might have been a lot. I have done other projects with data that I am doing in part for someone else. So they're citizen science projects where scientists are asking you to get like specific data on, say, one of them I did was about bald eagle. Kind of you watch their nest and see when the chicks are born, and there's all sorts of signs of what's going on. And so I would nature journal what their data sheet is of like, you need to look for these behaviors, do the weather, do the date, has to be an hour a week, that kind of thing. And then I would like take notes in my journals and submit online, usually like what data it was. That's what got me started on this project as well, because I'd seen other people do data or like projects over time. And I was like, that is a lot of work. A project over time, I don't know if I could ever do that. And then I was like, well, I'm committed with these citizen science projects. I've been like, yes, I have a commitment. I'll do this once a week, which, yeah, so that was really interesting and got me out there once a week, and which I was like, okay, I can kind of do this now. But yeah, so in summary, but I did look up after this. One of my questions was like, I am doing this for myself, but is there a citizen science project out there that like wants this kind of data? And so I did find one that includes this. I'm looking at maybe doing that project this year, next year. This one's called, I believe, Project Bud Burst, and it's looking at trees over time, but not just in fall. So you'd be looking for like early spring when there's no leaves at all. And then you're looking, and there's very specific things you have to track of just like, is there a single like little bud that's starting to open, you know, and hope ideally those are on 3 different branches. Is that like the qualification, or when is it about 50, or like when, what are their flowers? And so you're looking for different information. But yeah, sometimes citizen scientist projects can be even interesting inspiration for like data that you could collect.
Cool. Any other thoughts about citizen science for people who haven't like heard of that or haven't done any nature journaling connected? Because I know you do a variety of things like that.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I do have one of my journals from that.
Like, is that something you would recommend to other nature journalers who are mostly using it just for their own practice? Do you find that it's enriching in other ways?
Yeah, it's more of a commitment in a way. So, actually, some citizen scientist projects are not. I shouldn't say that. But I found it so valuable because it was like giving me ideas of behaviors or things I could track more regularly that I'd never thought about. Like, oh, I could track, you know, behaviors of birds and how that's over time. And I've just never thought about, oh, they're in the nest, they're not. So they were giving me some really cool ideas. But also it felt valuable to me of, since I'm doing like these nature journaling projects anyway, of like, and they are personal to me, but like, ooh, maybe I could use them to help someone else, or to, you
Hmm.
know, help just help scientists get that data, because there's not enough people, you know, there's not enough scientists to go out and get the data themselves. But if everyone works together, piece by piece, they can get a bigger picture of what they're
Hmm.
studying. So yeah, I'd say my citizen science projects are different in my normal nature journaling. They have to be a lot more structured and planned ahead, so it feels a little different. But it is a very fun thing to try. So yeah, if you're interested, and I was saying some of them are big commitments, but there are ones you'll find of like, you can just do data occasionally, and there is no like weekly schedule. I've just happened to do a number of those.
Cool. Cool, cool. Okay, we've got another question here from Cindy. That's sort of more about just the how you go about it.
Yeah, I'd say I'll start general, not talking about this tree project. I love going outside with others to journal, and some people might think that's like sitting around in a group, literally, looking at things and talking about them, which I have done. But also like even just meeting up at first and going out, spreading out, and then coming together and sharing at the end. Like I just love that. That's one of my favorite parts, is just hearing about what other people noticed.
Hmm.
And so I did actually, I used to live near San Francisco, had a nature journal club that I got to go to, where I met Marley and other folks, John Muir Laws. And then I moved to Wisconsin, and there's no nature journal club here. And I was like, I miss people. I want to find that, you know. So my way of finding other nature journalers was to start a nature journal club. So I lead it here. It's like
Yeah.
they got to be around. So yeah, I'm trying to connect people like that, and I know that helps. Mo One thing that helps motivate me to keep nature journaling is something like, I must do this once a week because I set a goal for myself. But really,
Yeah.
it's like having a time set aside if I'm going to be creative, and I'm scheduling this event and I have to be there. Like, it's, or someone else has scheduled an event and I want to go. Like, that helps me keep going, because there'll be tons of periods of times where I'll flip through my journal and just be like, the only time I've journaled recently is like
Yeah.
at my events. And so I
Exactly.
find, yeah, just keeping up that creativity. So I do both, but it's motivating to do it with other people, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel the same way. Okay, so I recently saw something really cool with I think they're male ants like emerging from the ground and starting to fly. And so it
Ooh.
that feels to me like a I've heard that in some like places in the world in certain cultures they have their certain like calendar things, and some of them are like, oh, when the male termites start flying. And so what do you think about like what is considered phenology and what to include and what not to include in a phenology project? Do you think plants and animals should all be in there? You have one that's all one species of tree, and maybe I think it was just one individual of tree. What do you think about, and this is probably something that applies to a lot of your projects, but what do you think about like this deciding on the scope of what data to include and what not to include? Like, is it better to like focus small, or could you just sort of free associate on that
Yeah,
question?
sure. There's like totally not a right answer to this at all. But I'll say, when I went out and did my journal pages, for the citizen sites like bald eagle nesting, I did have all my places of like, I need X, Y, and Z data for the scientists, but I was also like, oh, and there's these interesting plants popping up. Oh,
Uh-huh.
and there's these bugs. So like, this, I super limited myself, and it was a little strange. But these other projects, I have my huge journal, and so I'll write down anything I see that's interesting. And I did start noticing some specific things of just like, they were like, all of a sudden there's dragonflies this week. Like, what? Like, I think this is the first time I've seen I don't think
Hmm.
I saw any last week. So there was all these fascinating things. Yeah, I don't know. That's kind of, write down anything you're interested in. It was fun to see like one thing over time change. But when I was focused and going to that same place, I kept noticing like, oh, now these plants are sprouting up, and that like everything will change at once. So it is a cool thing to like focus, but yeah, it's hard to.
So it sounds like one of the strategies that you use is
Mhm.
you might be working on this specific project about bald eagles, but then you have your other journal with you, and if get distracted by other things you see, you can record them in that other journal.
Yeah, and I just had it in my same journal. I'm like, do I have any pages? It's just like, I'd have a section on my page of like,
Okay.
here's where I want my data, and then like
Yeah.
I could just keep going with anything else I wanted. Yeah, yeah.
That's what I'm trying to use that strategy with as one of my ways to not fail with this phonology wheel and to take the pressure off is I have like extra space. Like for
Mm.
even the sticky note, I can just put other
Mm.
information here so that I don't worry. And I'm using like I have my sticky note that says don't overthink so that I don't get
Yeah,
stuck there.
yeah. And you can't fail at a phonology wheel. Not finishing one isn't failing at all. You noticed amazing things while you're putting in there, and
Right. As
yeah,
long
yeah.
as as long as you don't like give up and make like a big deal about it and then worry about like, oh, like, I never finished it, now I'm never gonna do this again and stuff like that. So
Yeah, yeah, that goal of just like, this is fun and feeling good. That's one of my most important things too. And like I realized when preparing for this, I was like, I don't have all my books folded. I don't have that, like, should I finish this before going on the show? And it's like, who cares? Like, it's just, it's at the stage that it's at, and it's okay. Especially because it's just for me. Yeah.
Okay, so that brings me to my last question here. And we're gonna have you on the show later to like do a full like lightning round and a full interview and whatnot. But I wanted to get this phenology one out there because I think it's useful this time of year. There's wildflowers in some places. It's fall in the southern hemisphere, so
Mm, right.
if anyone is in Argentina or whatever. And so my last topic question is, what do you think about like aesthetics versus like communication of information? And I know that you work,
Mm,
and I put let me put your website here up on the screen. I put it down in the comments as well for people to get more information about your work. But you work in a field that where the communication of information and aesthetics are important. Do you do you think those things are related, or are they at counter purposes? And like, when people are creating a phenology wheel, is it just like a mandala that looks cool, or is there like things that, how do you find a balance there, or do you think
mm.
they're related or connected?
Um, yeah, well, first I'd say like my career probably is different than my answer for
Okay.
just nature journaling. But it's interesting because the colors, say in my book project, meant something. In this case it was like
Right.
literally the tree, so in that case I did it. And then kind of the, I don't know, the colors and the front part, I was like, that I just wanted to make it look pretty, and it became annoying for me. I was like, why am I
Mm,
doing this? This is going again and again. So I don't know. I think partially it might be people's individual goals for like what they want their nature journaling to look like. Perhaps because oftentimes for me, I don't mind when things aren't pretty. That said, data can be helpful with color. So bar graphs, maybe the color means something, or maybe you just want information to pop. So yeah, thinking about how you're using color in when you're doing data could be kind of fun and interesting. Um, but yeah, it might be more of like the consistency of how you're doing the data, which might need to be a little polished just so you can tell, the bar graphs maybe being the same height each time would
mhm.
be helpful to notice the data changing and everything, or and maybe that kind of polish versus my notes are all scribbly and I don't care, but some of the polish in here, that was a difference in my project, this project, and it was fun to try. In a way it was like annoying and a bit of a burden, but I liked it. It was fun to try it. So,
Yeah, because I mean, if we look at these all lined up here on the ground, and even just
mhm,
the way they're folded, I think most people, even if they can't read like the information on there, I would say most people would look at that and be like, "Wow, that looks really cool." There's something about
mm,
seeing this project that I think is visually appealing. And so, um, do you think that's just sort of like a byproduct?
yeah, I guess I guess I haven't really thought about that before. Like, yes, they do become quite pretty. Um, and I don't, part of it, sorry, I have them lined up here as well. So I'm looking at them, but yeah, they're the color of the tree. Data's beautiful. Data's I think just beautiful. One reason I like doing data is it the aesthetics of data itself. Like I think bar graphs are just so cool looking, and tables and charts. So so yeah, in that way. And then of course there's the different colors of the trees and everything. Colors meaning something, and yeah, those. But yeah, I guess I haven't really thought much about how pretty they are, but I love the language of data. I just think, yeah, I just love tables and graphs and charts, and I just think they're beautiful.
Cool. Okay, well, I feel like this is a perfect motivation for people to do some phonology observations this season, and also maybe think about data and charts and diagrams in a more fun way. Like, imagine Amy had been your science teacher or something in middle school, and you're like, wow, suddenly these diagrams and pie charts are really really fun. And I think that's really inspiring because I think a lot of times with nature journaling, people's entree into nature journaling is the sort of aesthetic and the visual and the watercolor. And I know that a lot of my pages like lean heavily on the drawing of things, but I feel like the data can really, and these sort of diagrams can really um, collect information in a really functional way and communicate it. But then they also do, I think, really add a lot visually to a page. Like if I'm flipping through someone's journals and it's all like Edith Holden nature diaries of an Edwardian lady, where it's just like it's just the drawing of the plant and then it's like cursive species name, that gets kind of boring aesthetically to me. But if I start flipping through someone's journal and it has like all kinds of mixtures of like diagrams and stuff, that I think is aesthetically a lot more interesting, and I'll spend a lot longer looking at that. So I feel like this conversation is a good motivation for anyone out there who's like, afraid of diagrams or afraid of numbers and stuff like that, to maybe try it out a little bit more.
Yeah, I think just the different forms of writing or drawing or doing data kind of thing, it just engages your brain in a different way. So like
Yeah.
this just made me so curious. And it's just another tool. Or right, like John Muir Law says like there's the language of like numbers, which is harder for me sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Like the pictures and words and numbers and
Mm-hmm.
the diagrams and charts are like the visual form of numbers, which
Yeah.
might appeal to people being us being visual folks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you so much, Amy. And for people who
Yeah.
want to learn more, you can find Amy's website there, and she has a whole portfolio with a bunch of these projects and some other projects on there also. And we'll do another longer interview in the future.
Great. Okay. Thanks for having me here, Marley.
Thanks, everyone, for tuning in.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone.